Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning on our high notes. We are going to be discussing today AI and the vulnerabilities that it is bringing to your business and some cybersecurity threats. We're excited to be joined by Jason Gotway with Anders CPA firm out of St. Louis. He is a technology practice leader, over 15 years of experience at Anders, helping businesses enhance their technology and cybersecurity strategy. He focuses on finding new strategies, products, and methods for keeping his clients safe from evolving cybersecurity threats. Of course, AI being one of them. So, Jason, thank you for joining us today. Excited about what you have to say. Is AI always creates a big question mark, right? And how do we handle this? And I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. Some of it good, some of it bad. But I did want to kind of evangelize for everyone the things going on, what can be helpful, what can be hurtful, and kind of let you know about your business, maybe what's going on in the background, and share just maybe a few things in general that may help you on a personal level, or things for your business that may be good for protecting your organization. So kind of kicking it off, I'll give you the current state of things. So cybersecurity attacks are they're everywhere. Uh, they're especially, I would point out the small business sector, because you don't hear about them in the news a lot. But I mean, the last four cybersecurity incidents that I was involved in, they were all small business. There's an engineering company, HVAC company, um, and then you do hear other things like, our educational institutions, especially here in our region, municipalities, healthcare institutions. It's there. It's there whether you're hearing about it or not. Um, Phishing emails are still the primary attack vector for a lot of cyber attacks, and that's probably the point I have to really hit on the most, only because it's going to be easy to understand how clear it is, how generative AI has really made it very tricky to identify phishing emails. Business email compromise is still really common. I can share a few different ways attackers are using, um, that I've seen in firsthand, real world examples, and also how AI is being used by both attackers and cybersecurity professionals. And I'll probably step on that one first, because um, like the current state of AI, you hear about things like Chat GPT and Copilot. Sometimes whenever I'm in a room, full of people, talking about this, and you ask people to raise their hands, like, how many of you are using Chat GPT on a daily basis? And it's usually half or a little less than half, if you're asking uh, people if they've engaged with some sort of generative AI tool. Hackers, no different. They're using it to launch uh, attacks. They can make very, very convincing emails. It used to be, I can step in a little more in the presentation, but you could kind of tell in the content of an email, like, hey, this isn't legitimate. But now with like generative AI, you can write a very, very good email, even for somebody that is around the world in a different culture, and maybe has different content in their email, the way they send them. With generative AI, you're able to make a very convincing email for somebody around the world on the other side of the world, and it trick a lot more people. But on the good side of defensive AI, um, your cybersecurity teams can use AI to more quickly analyze data coming in, and kind of spot threats faster, better. So it's good and bad what AI is doing. Um, you can kind of make your own judgment after I share a little bit of information with you about this. But phishing emails is probably the part that I need to share the most about. Um, so you can look for all these bullet points. I'm not going to list them all off, but all these bullet points where you can look for indicators that, like an email is bad news. So between these like seven, eight topics here, we can go into each one, and I can kind of tell you how AI has changed what we're looking for. Um, so in an email address, in the training that we had circa 5, 10 years ago about saying, hey, don't open or click on these types of emails. So, kind of the old school one here, the Amazon instead of Amazon. Nowadays, they're kind of like on social media. There's kind of these challenges to be like, read this sentence, and it'll have like all the little all the letters jumbled up in a sentence, but your mind, whenever you were reading it, it kind of put it all together and made it accurate. So this is kind of taking advantage of that same thing. Not a whole lot to do with AI here, but it's still something you have to look for in um, emails that you're receiving. A lot, and spam filters and things have gotten a lot better. So attackers have to get more creative with some of these things. So my email address, jgotway@anderscpa.com, they may add something in there like to make it look legitimate, like adding a 101 or something behind it like that. That would also be an example of how an attacker would try to infiltrate your email system and get in somebody's inbox. A lot of organizations, very, very small organizations, usually may still be using like a Gmail account. But, Anders obviously is not. We have our own domain. But an attacker may use like at Gmail or at yahoo.com with still my username up there, or add a .corp behind it to make it look more corporate. Again, not totally related to AI, but these are old school ways that are still working. So you have to be aware of them. Generative AI, like ChatGPT, like if an attacker wrote or asked ChatGPT to write a message, and then they're going to put their malicious content in there or whatever their initiative is. But if it has a suspicious greeting in it, like dear customer or dear user, a lot of my customers I have a relationship with, where we may text or something. I know if I'm getting the word dear in the beginning of the message, immediate red flag goes up. Like, they're not sending me that. And I imagine for a lot of people it's the same way. You're not expecting that. So the same thing for like email attachments. It's something unexpected, especially even from people I know. If I get like an attachment that sometimes comes from a scanner or something like that, where the name of the attachment doesn't look safe, I'll call them. I'll just say, hey, is this accurate? This file you sent me, is this safe to open? And just as that extra piece, because the flip side of it is, if you opened it even from someone or something like that, and it did have malicious content in it, my goodness, after that you have to call the support desk and be like, I clicked on something I shouldn't have. I don't know what impact it's having on the system. You don't need that kind of trouble. So especially also if you receive an attachment from someone you don't know, it's just flat out, delete the email. The grammar style is one of the things I mentioned earlier, but ChatGPT or other generative AI solutions like that can make it very much more difficult than it has been in the past to identify an email that is not safe, because the verbiage and everything in it, no misspelled words, things like that, they used to be evident in a more emails that were malicious. It's not like that anymore. That's one of the major things about AI that is making it more difficult to identify malicious emails. Also, unusual requests. We've all probably heard of some awful story about gift cards being purchased, or urgent, verify my account, or urgent payment, delete those emails. It's ridiculous. The part I feel bad about, like, is some people are like on that phone all the time. They're addicted to Instagram or Facebook or social media or some sort. And if they got that email that says, "Hey, we're shutting off your Instagram or your Snapchat or whatever it is," it's going to cause some panic because they don't want to lose access to that. Those are kind of the things kind of have to look out for whenever we're thinking of, verify my account. Phishing emails, sometimes they use emotional situations. Same thing, ChatGPT or Grok. I pick on ChatGPT a lot. It's very popular. But Grok, there's other generative AI solutions out there that can, make a convincing email. But also, like, the branding and logos. AI is getting better and better at manipulating those. I would say there's probably, if you look closely, there's still content that may not match. There may be inconsistencies, like in the logo. Some of the color schemes may not be exactly right. And this generic signatures one, probably for the past year or so, I've seen very generic signatures, and I'm like, this is a good chance this email is not right. And also, a lot of the times there's like, I don't want anything to do with this email, and I'm looking at the signature. Between all these things, it's made a case for me not to open this email. I'm just going to delete it. And one of the things that's been, I have to say, more recent, that it's had a huge impact for major amounts of money is like fake invoices. So I think it was back 2013 to 2015. That was either Facebook or Google. I can't remember which one, but they paid out $1 million over the course of 2 years, just paying fake invoices to a person. That person went to jail, but it did happen. So, fake invoices can happen, I would say a number of different ways. But the point is, like, on large payments, like between businesses that have legitimacy, like, I like to work closely with all the parties involved. There's some scarier stuff later in the presentation, but a phone call, kind of getting your own verification, like whenever you're talking to people on the phone that you may know that you're working with, like, hey, how's the wife and kids? Those types of relationships that you have to kind of verify if money is changing hands, pay for work or pay for your invoices. So kind of the point in what I'm seeing out there is that, your vendors can be hacked. And just because your organization invests money in like firewalls and endpoint protection and all the security functions and everything, not everybody does that. If you're lucky, you and the people that you partner with, both have a strong emphasis on cybersecurity, and you make a economical, a monetary effort to make sure everything's locked down, and you have good security. Not everybody, looks at it that way. So, if you're regularly exchanging emails and whatnot with, another organization, that you kind of still have to keep your guard up when you're receiving emails from them, especially when it comes to things that are monetary, to make sure that the emails you're receiving from them, that their email system hasn't been compromised and the attacker isn't the one sending messages to you. You have to keep your guard up, regardless of that someone you partner with closely or not. So AI in business today, this is probably not adopted, significantly by a lot of organizations that we're talking to. So a lot of times whenever I ask an organization, like, hey, how are you currently using AI? And they'll say like summarizing a meeting, transferring a spreadsheet to a PDF, usually large document processing. They'll do some of that. Um, writing emails is very popular. Cleaning up your email inbox. But the really important part about this, and I'll touch on this for like Copilot as well, Microsoft Copilot solution, um, is don't enter private information or customer information into the free tools, because that can be used to kind of train the models, and kind of once that information's out there, you can't get it back. So there are pay for versions. I think ChatGPT does a very, very good job of explaining, hey, the enterprise version on their website does, it explains that, hey, this is only yours. You can enter your information in here if you feel comfortable. But just in general, your employee base, even you for yourself, should not, don't put anything into the free tools that you don't want the world knowing about, unless you're on a paid version that kind of makes the claim that your data is safe here. Uh, Kind of on a smaller scale, if you are a Microsoft 365 organization where you're using them for email and Office products and whatnot, um, kind of the same methodology. Um, Before you ever like have a Copilot license deployed to your company, um, I would go through a process first of verifying what all of the employees have access to. So you could buy the Copilot license, because you see that little logo everywhere. Actually, I had one on that screen earlier, but you can have Copilot kind of search everywhere in your organization's tenancy, if security rights aren't set up properly. So, the way I'm explaining this is like ChatGPT, you can send your information out to the world if you're using the free tool. In Copilot, every employee may have access to every file system if your security isn't set up properly. What I'm trying to do is limit the data from being accessed by individuals who shouldn't have access to it, whether it be ChatGPT, whether it be Copilot, in our use cases. So AI kind of being used against your business. Now, I mentioned earlier about like AI powered phishing. So really trying to apply this to like small business, mid-sized business. Um, these tools can write these scam emails. Like it says here, no bad grammar, personalized, urgent, and ransomware can happen in one click. It can you're visiting a page, you click on something you shouldn't, it can happen. And I have seen it in the wild. I've seen ransomware, like somebody clicked something, and then I believe in that instance it was in the task scheduler of Microsoft or of Windows, and it was like 60 days later whenever the ransomware would actually take off. Um, Now there's a difference. That's whenever it would like initiate. In the last incident response I was involved in, I think it was like October 17th. The attacker gained initial access, and then they figured out what rights they had within the environment with the username and password that they had. And then it took them about 14 days before they kind of manually executed the ransomware. It's like different ways this can happen. Okay. So a lot of times, though, I think it's around 80% of the time, kind of the vector is email. And AI has not helped us kind of decipher that when an email is bad. So also, I mentioned like, hey, whenever you are asking someone, hey, is this email legitimate, or hey, is this payment legitimate? Um, there's also voice deepfakes. So um, there's an example here, but like your voice can also be manipulated. So whenever you are speaking with someone on the phone that you need information for, it can't be that real quick conversation, in my opinion, especially when major funds are being transferred. But if you have a little bit of a conversation, a relationship with people, those really help in eliminating this as a possibility. So, I think many people have been on social media. You're like, wow, is that picture real, or is that video real? Or now it's like, is that voice real? And it's like this different set of reality. Like, hey, that didn't really happen. It's parody, or it's a novelty, or something else. But this is going on. It's kind of scary. Like, I have concern for myself. What if someone made a video of me doing something that would reflect poorly on me? I think everybody should have that concern. But this is going on. It's kind of one of the bad sides of AI. So I mentioned this, and you might have heard this from me before in a presentation. There's probably a few of you that have seen me present, but I always tell everyone that there are tools that are called like Shodan, that are automated tools that are scanning companies like all day, every day, just looking at different characteristics about your organization. Hackers can use these tools. They're looking for the easiest attack vector possible to make a quick dollar. But as fast as possible, as quick as they can, as many as they can. And hackers see, like, kind of the smaller the business, they know the less infrastructure they have in place from a cybersecurity perspective, to hold up a defense. Um, so, I think the example that's used at the bottom here, a heating and cooling company gets breached because its router firmware hasn't been updated in years. Yeah, it may be like a consumer grade router. It may have had a ton of vulnerabilities. I know I was recently, personally, I won't say what business. I don't want to give it away here in our region, but um, there's a place where I had to run my debit card, and I could see the little cable running from the debit card machine up to this router, and it was too late at this point. I had already put my my debit card in, um, but it was going up to the router, and the gentleman sitting there, well, I think he was the owner of the organization. He said, "Man, my internet's been going in and out. It's been dropping," and I was like, "Oh no!" So I knew that little router, just by looking at it, had a little bit of age on it. So this gentleman was actually courteous enough. I'm like, "Hey, that's kind of my line of work. Do you mind if I look at that real quick?" So I looked at it, and then I did my research on it, and it did have firmware updates and whatnot. But I really stress to organizations, especially if they're running credit cards and whatnot, that have adequate security, and kind of you can get $100 router probably from Best Buy, but a few $100s on a small firewall that can like properly protect your business. Um, it's probably well worth it, and it's also going to bring people like me comfort whenever you're running your debit card or credit card. And another part is misinformation and brand damage. So, fake social media posts. You probably seen videos of this too on social media of how fast AI can generate like reviews, and a lot of times now, whenever I am doing I'm looking, maybe I'm making a purchase on Amazon, but it seems like, how many of these are fake? You have to ask yourself that. And you can tell some of them are, and then there's some in there that maybe a small paragraph I can be like, oh, okay, I can kind of tell this person has bought this product, and there's details in here that it's hard, but I'm able to detect that, hey, they probably did this. This is kind of similar to what I'm going through, that I'm kind of addressing my problem by buying this product, or whatever it's doing to make life better for me. Um, this example here is on a Facebook post here at the bottom. But whenever you're thinking about what information is out there about your organization, or maybe about you personally, the impact AI could have on it. I think this is one area that will get worse as time goes on. So I would just have a awareness, and hopefully we don't have to really highly prioritize this, but it is happening. A business email compromise is very common, maybe still the number one attack that organizations go through. I do hear about it most often, but essentially, business email compromise just impersonates like a trusted person. And we talked about this earlier about the vendor or fellow employee that appears to be legitimate. A lot of times it does have a financial component to it. Just one thing that's a little bit different about business email compromise is they don't contain malware usually. Uh, they may also just target specific individuals within an organization. They usually have financial responsibilities. So in the previous generation of email, we used, username and password. Back at SIUE, whenever I was there a lifetime ago in college, right when I got there, it would have been fall of 2002. The the registration office, I guess, gave me a username and password for my email account. There's no two-factor authentication on it way back then. Fast forward a few years, and now we're putting, two-factor authentication on things. So, and just kind of side note, make sure you have two-factor authentication on everything you have, like, your Facebook, LinkedIn, email, everything. We need two-factor on everything at this point. But I do have to disclose that now in our current generation, here we are like 3 generations ahead on this topic, that two-factor authentication is now being successfully attacked. So you still, even with two-factor authentication in place, you still may get attacked, successfully attacked. And I'll tell you how. So method 1 here is a phishing email, and then an employee is tricked into entering their credentials. And then they're also tricked into entering the two-factor authentication code afterwards. And then the attacker has full access to an email account for a period of time until it can be identified. So kind of the way, and even the smartest people get fooled. You may be thinking, well, they got fooled once on their credentials, and then they got fooled again on the 2FA code. I got contacted by an attorney on Memorial Day a couple of years ago, saying, "Hey, I fell for it. I fell for it twice. I made it all the way through there, and it wasn't for a while that I realized what was going on." I'm like, yeah, it's okay. You're telling me fast enough. We can probably get in there and make sure no damage was done, which it was fine. But smart people, it's happening. There's kind of a way to kind of sidestep this, but I'll show you an image here in a minute to kind of help with this. But after that kind of happens, whenever an attacker successfully gets an email account, they can impersonate the employee and message different people looking like the employee, and they can redirect payments, change payment information, request like sensitive documents. Also, kind of to mask the fact that they're in there, they may delete emails or set up forwarding rules for future emails to go to, kind of keeping the employee unaware of what's going on, right? So I think in nearly every case we've asked our customers, everybody, that we kind of come in contact with on this subject, that do you want forwarding rules set up, that just the ability to set up a forwarding rule so that future emails, potentially could go elsewhere. And the vast majority of the time, maybe very few cases where somebody's like, no, go ahead and leave forwarding rules on. I want to be able to forward my company email to a Gmail account or a Yahoo account or something like that. That's not the case. Nobody is really allowing forwarding rules in their email tenancy anymore from our perspective. So you can kind of avoid the situation a little bit. Like I can show you a snippet of the screenshot kind of from Anders. Like I know this is my safe spot for me to enter my information. Is AI maybe, an attacker going to ruin this a little bit in the future? I know all this is changing for Anders, so I can throw this up here and feel kind of safe about, sharing it publicly. But um, using this background and checking the domain name, and making sure, this is the safest zone I can have to log in for multi-factor, for first authentication and multi-factor. This is kind of the safe area to kind of combat entering in areas, username, password, and two-factor in areas where you shouldn't. So this is a more I would say it's all terrible, but how an attacker can get through accounts with two-factor authentication using tokens rather than the two-factor authentication code. So this does involve an attacker sending a malicious link, like a website or download from an email, to where the malicious software can grab the session token. So kind of explained here quickly is that whenever your organization does have multi-factor authentication set up, that it doesn't ask you every time you check your email for two-factor authentication. It may ask you, or you're checking your OneDrive or logging into whatever software it may be. It's not asking you every single time. It's asking you maybe every 14 days, maybe every 30 days, maybe every 60 days. So that little token in the background is what is allowing you not to have to enter two-factor codes all the time. So whenever an attacker gains access to that token, that's when the bad news starts, and they can kind of bypass the two-factor authentication entirely. So kind of the thing here that's helping you and your organization out again is don't click on malicious links in email or on a malicious website, because this way is very, very sneaky. So the two-factor attacks are kind of known as man in the middle, if you've ever heard something like that. So always be careful and double check your links, and also the education piece on training and phishing awareness. Like in my opinion, everybody should be getting trained at least twice a month, where you are your organization is sending you an email or two a month to see if you will fall for it. And then if you do, then get a little bit of training after that clicked on email, that shouldn't have been clicked on. These, I think like 4% of employees, so maybe 4 out of 100, right, will put risk for your organization. If you can shrink that number down to like 2 or 1, to really reduce that risk, that's kind of my goal for organizations whenever they're signing up for that training. Mobile devices is I think quite frankly it's been overlooked a lot by organizations. Company email on my phone. I've lost a phone before. It was like 15 years ago, but I've lost a phone before, and it had like my company email on it, and I had to hurry up, gain access to our, like an Exchange server and wipe my phone because I didn't know where it was. I don't want organizations to have to go through that. There needs to be, if you have, company workloads like OneDrive, email, Teams is a huge one now where people are storing documents, that you need to have a passcode on your phone. I know it's a nuisance. People don't like it. But pretty well, I mean, also if you don't want people looking at your pictures, if they just randomly pick up your phone, um, okay, we need to have passcodes on these devices. And we're moving into like more of a world of, you may hear the term zero trust more frequently. So my goal is for like company sanctioned laptops, company sanctioned smartphones. The only, business workloads, the apps and data that your organization uses should only be accessible by company sanctioned computers that your organization has given to you, it's deployed to you between phones, laptops. Um, so we're ensuring that these have a good security policy. So some random attacker in one of the troublemaker countries isn't able to log in from their laptop. We can secure. We're at a place in time where organizations can lock down your company's workloads to your laptop and your phone. So we need to do that. Secondly, here avoid to keep your machine safe and clean and not give up any data is avoid connecting to unsecured public Wi-Fi. I use a ton of data because I use my hotspot on my phone a lot whenever I'm traveling. And also, if you don't have a hotspot, you could technically connect to public Wi-Fi and use a company VPN. I'm not a huge fan of that for performance reasons or really security reasons in general. But if you have to, that's kind of the way to do it. Um, Also, um, back I think it was 2022 Super Bowl. I won't mention the teams that were playing, but or who won, but during those Super Bowl commercials, we log into or the Super Bowl. There's the commercials. There's food. Everything's great. The commercials in this case, there was like a QR code bouncing around on that screen for, I think it was for Coinbase, but it was bouncing around on screen like the old Pong game on Atari. And the idea was that people would use their phone to scan the QR code to go to Coinbase's website. Um, we can't do that anymore because QR codes can contain something malicious. So this happened to me like it had to be less than 6 months ago. I was out in public somewhere, and one of my kids had my wife's phone, and they had scanned something and I went into a panic because I was in a public place and I'm like looking around like what did they just scan? Oh my goodness! And then they ended up showing me what they scanned, and it was safe. But you know, for 3 to 7 seconds there, I was worried because I didn't know what it was that they had scanned, and me, seeing stuff I do on a daily basis made me paranoid as to what was going on. So I don't want everyone to be paranoid about scanning QR codes, but I do want everyone to take a look at hey, what is this doing for me? What app is this going to download for me? This isn't just some random code that was bouncing around on a screen during a Super Bowl that I'm like, yeah, I got to see what this is. We can't live in that world anymore. Ransomware is still a behemoth. So firewalls, spam filters, training. Your organization can do pretty well everything right, and sometimes an email can still make it through a spam filter that's malicious. So, like I said, your organization can do everything right, but um, security is definitely in layers. Um, a lot of organizations um, have a firewall, but there are many different kinds of firewalls. They're not all configured the same. They're not all like newer with all the security features. Some organizations don't license all the security features. Some go with a brand that has like a ton of updates that you constantly have to be on top of, like firmware updates. Um, Hackers know this. They know the brands. They know how to get through them. They know where their weak spots are. So there's like all these little layers, that are helpful. I got into kind of an argument the other day with somebody. They're like, well, if I have multi-factor authentication, on my VPN, um, why do I need to have it like on my servers also, or on these other areas of our environment? And I'm like, well, it's that layered protection, because sometimes an attacker can make it through one section, and then they'll make it to another, and then another. And a lot of times, when I'm looking at logs of when attackers got into an environment, I can see that, hey, this is where they struggled at, and they struggled to get around this piece of security. Okay, then I can go back and kind of share with a person or someone arguing with me or anything about, hey, this is what I've seen going on in the wild. So I encourage everyone, businesses, to make sure you do layers of security with spam filters, train your employees, firewalls, endpoint protection, just to name a few. But also your insurance company, if you have cyber insurance, which I highly recommend, um, they're going to be asking you more diligently. Hey, are you doing these things? Because it's going to have an impact on your premium, or we just won't insure you. They didn't ask a lot of questions about things, around 2020. Nowadays, like if you get a traveler's insurance document, it's pretty thorough. There's a lot of things on there that they recommend that aren't bad ideas, regardless if you were seeking it, doing them for cybersecurity insurance or not. Um, we've talked about malicious emails quite a bit. I do want to reiterate, though, that there are really, really good spam filters. There are some that are just, they're okay. Okay, they block some emails, but the bottom line is, regardless, malicious emails can get past the best spam filters. Sometimes you still have to have one. It's still great, but emails still get through them. If you clicked on something suspicious, please do contact IT immediately. I think embarrassment was like a big deal about this going back 5, 6 years ago. I think people are more terrified of the result if they don't speak up, if something were to subsequently happen. So most times now, I see organizations admitting that, hey, this employee admitted they clicked on something they didn't know. Here's all the information that they can provide for us. And ransomware, a lot of times, I'm on the incident response team at Anders for our cybersecurity practice. And it's an awful day for the business owner. I don't like seeing anybody go through that. It's the downtime, the lost revenue, just the overall carnage of the situation. And I hear the same words over and over again whenever you're having these conversations, kind of trying to get them through it. And it's like, I just want things to go back to normal. I'll do a better job with security in the future. And I think our presence, whenever we're physically there going through the situation with them, we can feel that pain with them, where we want to get them back to normal. But back to normal is kind of key. So if you have any way to prevent, that carnage that happens, like in a major cybersecurity incident, please take it. And I appreciate everyone coming to this presentation to let me evangelize a little bit on this, all the cybersecurity efforts going on, how AI is changing your world a little bit. But knowing how ransomware is transmitted, with phishing emails, malicious websites. Also, if you have questions, that you're always welcome to reach out to me. AI is also kind of a good tool for if you have very basic questions like, hey, can I get ransomware from just visiting a website? If you ask those things to like ChatGPT or something, it's probably going to give you, a nice, thoughtful answer. In some of these cases, if you do have questions about cybersecurity, you can come run it by me also if you'd like. I'm always available for these types of questions. But you can kind of use it that way, in a positive way as well. It's not AI is not all negative. There's a lot of positives coming out of it. So knowing how AI has changed cybersecurity, the phishing email advancements, unfortunately, there's a lot of good use cases for AI. Knowing about business email compromise, um, securing your mobile devices, and malicious websites. Staying off of those and not interacting with malicious websites. I have cut about 10 minutes for any questions that anybody has or anything they'd like to discuss with me. I'm certainly available, and I will share my contact information here real quick if you'd like to get a hold of me. And if anybody'd like to speak up with any questions, I'm here.
All right, Jason, I will take a look in the chat, give people a moment to type if they have any questions coming through. It's interesting. It kind of brought up an idea for me. You talked about people using the phone and
Mhm.
AI being someone coming through. I actually told somebody this morning that I met with somebody and I was like, I don't even know if that was a real person. Like, I kind of feel like they may have been AI generated.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
now, like, we're coming to that point that we're actually questioning these things. Like, is it a person? Is it AI? Really, you never know.
yeah. You don't anymore. It's everything's kind of called into question about what is reality, what's not. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't see any questions coming in to the chat or anything like that. So you must have covered all of those questions within your presentation. Thank you for coming today. As always, we do appreciate it. This recording will be sent out to everybody that's been registered, along with the information for the continuing education credit. So coming up next with High Notes in May 21st, we will be having our heading into summer legal update. Some exciting things there. If you've been watching the state of Missouri, we know that Proposition A, paid sick leave, will go into effect tomorrow. So unless, coming up later in May, the legislature decides to pass a bill to turn it down again. So all those fun things will be covered coming up May 21st with the legal update. And we hope to see you all there. Thank you for your time today, Jason, and thank you all for attending.
Thanks for having me. See you.
Have a great day.